The North Atlantic does not forgive error. In winter, its surface temperature hovers near freezing. Wind speeds exceed 60 knots. Waves rise higher than buildings. Water this cold does not feel cold. It removes heat so quickly that the body stops registering sensation. Muscles fail, breathing destabilizes. Cardiac rhythm becomes irregular. Without intervention, survival time is measured in minutes. On February 18, 1952, the oil tanker SS Pendleton was crossing these waters. She was a T2 tanker, 500 feet long, loaded with heating oil, built quickly during wartime production. Steel fatigues under stress. Cold weakens it further. The storm that night applied continuous force. Waves struck the hull with percussive repetition. Metal flexed. Rivets strained. The crew monitored gauges. Pressure systems fluctuated. Then the ship fractured, not gradually, not predictably. The hull split in two. The bows separated from the stern. The forward section flooded and sank. The stern remained afloat. 33 men were still aboard. Power failed. Radio systems were destroyed. Navigation was gone. The rear half of the ship drifted, uncontrolled, in open storm. The ocean temperature was just above freezing. Air temperature was lower. Wind amplified heat loss. Hypothermia thresholds were immediate. On shore at Chatham Lifeboat Station in Massachusetts, radar operators detected irregular signals. Reports filtered in. 2 tankers had broken apart in the same storm. Rescue conditions were declared impossible. Standard protocol recommended delay. The Coast Guard evaluated wave height over 60 feet. Visibility was near zero. Harbour bar crossings were lethal in such surf, but 33 men were still alive. Boatswain's mate First Class Bernard Webber was assigned command of a 36-foot motor lifeboat, wooden hull, single engine, minimal navigation tools, capacity rated for 12 survivors, 4 men boarded: Webber, Andrew Fitzgerald, Irvin Maskey, Richard Livesey. They left harbour into full storm force. The first barrier was the Chatham Bar, a shifting sandbar known to overturn vessels even in moderate seas. That night, waves broke over it continuously. The lifeboat climbed one wall of water, then dropped into a trough, then climbed again. The engine strained, but held. A breaking wave struck broadside. The boat flipped. Cold Atlantic water swallowed the crew. Shock response triggered involuntary gasping. If inhalation occurred underwater, drowning would follow within seconds. Training overrode panic. They located the vessel. The lifeboat was self-righting. It rolled back upright. The engine had stalled. Fitzgerald restarted it manually. Salt water drained from the deck. They continued. Miles offshore, the stern of the Pendleton drifted alone. Its crew had attempted stabilization. One man, Ray Seibert, an engineer, assumed de facto leadership. He calculated drift angles, adjusted ballast, used engine room controls to keep the fragment afloat as long as possible. No captain remained. Chain of command had dissolved. Hierarchy was replaced by necessity. Inside the broken tanker, steel bulkheads groaned. Each wave threatened structural collapse. Men tied themselves to railings to avoid being swept away. They had no expectation of rescue. Hours later, through snow and darkness, Webber sighted a faint shape. Not lights, not signals, just a darker outline against darker sea. Navigation instruments had been destroyed earlier by the capsize. Compass unreadable. Wind direction estimated by feel. He steered toward the silhouette. The first approach nearly crushed them. A wave pushed the lifeboat toward the steel wreckage. Collision would have splintered wood instantly. Webber reversed throttle at the last second. Timing became everything. They waited for a trough between waves, moved in, pulled back, moved in again. Ropes were thrown. One by one, survivors jumped. The lifeboat was rated for 12. They took 33. Men were stacked shoulder to shoulder. Water pooled at their boots. Freeboard was nearly gone. One more large wave could swamp them. Webber turned toward shore. There was no navigation equipment left. The compass light had failed. The windshield was shattered. Snow blinded visibility. He steered by memory, by calculating wind direction, by estimating current drift, by recalling the outbound angle from harbour hours earlier. Men began showing hypothermia symptoms, uncontrolled shivering, slurred speech, delayed response times. If core temperature dropped below 32 degrees Celsius, cardiac arrest risk increased sharply. They redistributed weight to maintain balance. No sudden movements, no standing. Silence, except for wind. The return crossing of the Chatham Bar was worse than the first. Harbour lights were blacked out due to storm power failure. No visual markers remained. On shore, civilians had lined vehicles along the beach. Headlights were turned toward the sea. That light corridor became the only guide. Webber aimed toward it. A breaking wave lifted the lifeboat vertically. For a moment, propeller left water. Engine revved uselessly. Then the hull slammed down. Wood held. Another wave followed. Then another. Finally, the boat crossed the bar. They reached harbour with 32 survivors. One man from the stern had already died before rescue. 32 lived. No advanced equipment had enabled this. No satellite tracking, no thermal imaging, no reinforced steel hull, only training. Procedure, judgment under stress. Hypothermia cases were transferred to medical facilities. Most recovered fully. The rescue would later be called one of the greatest small boat rescues in Coast Guard history. But survival in that storm was not cinematic. It was incremental. It was throttle control measured in inches. It was timing jumps between waves. It was maintaining engine function after submersion. It was leadership without rank. The North Atlantic remained unchanged after that night. Water temperature still hovers near freezing. Storms still fracture steel. Wind still extracts heat from exposed skin. The difference was human intervention. Survival in maritime terms depends on minutes. Cold water immersion at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius allows approximately 10 to 15 minutes of meaningful movement. After that, coordination declines rapidly. After 30 minutes, unconsciousness is likely. After 60, mortality rates spike dramatically. The Pendleton crew did not enter the water. That distinction preserved life. Containment, elevation above sea level, preserved heat, preserved time. Time allowed rescue. Bernard Webber later minimized the event. He stated they simply did their job. But survival at sea is arithmetic. Buoyancy versus mass. Engine torque versus wave force. Core temperature versus exposure duration. Small margins determine outcome. The SS Pendleton's stern eventually sank after the rescue. Steel yielded to corrosion and stress. The ocean reclaimed the structure. The men survived because procedure held longer than the hull did. Extreme survival is often portrayed as wilderness isolation, but isolation can exist in open ocean surrounded by crew. When systems fail, individuals become the system. The Coast Guard crew that night replaced broken steel with decision-making. They replaced instrumentation with memory. They replaced certainty with action. The Atlantic storm did not weaken. It did not grant passage. It applied the same force continuously. Humans adapted within it. Today, modern vessels carry reinforced hulls, satellite distress beacons, redundant power grids, but the fundamental variables remain unchanged. Cold extracts heat. Water overwhelms lungs. Wind destabilizes structure. Survival is not heroism, it is controlled response within hostile physics. 32 men lived because 4 men entered conditions officially deemed impossible. Not recklessly, but deliberately. They calculated risk, accepted it, maintained function inside it, and returned. In extreme environments, survival does not reward strength alone, it rewards structure, training, repetition, decision-making under compression. The North Atlantic remains cold, storms continue to fracture steel, ships continue to cross. But on one February night in 1952, procedure outlasted chaos, and 32 men stepped back onto land, alive.